The Galactic SOS went out. Earth answered with Warships. Part 5. Admiral Kevin Park received the message on the bridge of the Benjamin Cole. The words were simple and cruel. Commander Grant and her team had been captured. They would be executed at dawn as a warning to all who would oppose the swarm. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Lisa Grant was more than an officer. She was a symbol of everything this mission represented. She was the bridge between humanity and the aliens they had come to save. Her death would mean the end of any hope for peace. "Admiral," Captain Daniel Shaw said quietly, "a rescue mission into the heart of Kathrani space would be suicide. We would lose ships. We would lose soldiers. And we would probably fail anyway." "I know," Admiral Park replied. He stared at the star map showing the location of the Kathrani homeworld, surrounded by defensive positions that would shred any attacking fleet. "Then what do we do?" Admiral Park was silent for a long moment. He thought about Lisa Grant, who had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. He thought about the soldiers who had already died defending strangers. He thought about what it meant to be human. "We do something they will never expect," he said finally. "We give them something to believe in." The Third Fleet jumped to the Kathrani homeworld in full battle formation. 112 warships, weapons hot, shields raised, ready for the most desperate fight of the war. The Kathrani defenders scrambled to meet them. Thousands of bioships rising from orbital stations. But instead of attacking, Admiral Park broadcast a message across all frequencies. "This is Admiral Kevin Park of the United Nations Space Command. I have come not to fight, but to offer myself in exchange for my captured officers. Release Commander Grant and her team, and I will surrender myself as a hostage. You will have the commander of the human fleet as your prisoner. Surely that is worth more than 4 soldiers." The Kathrani were stunned. This was not how enemies behaved. Enemies attacked. Enemies threatened. They did not offer themselves in sacrifice for others, thought the warrior faction responded with mockery. "You are a fool, human. Why would we accept one prisoner when we can have your entire fleet?" "Because you would have to destroy us first," Admiral Park replied calmly. "And even if you succeed, you will pay a terrible price. I have seen what human soldiers are willing to do. I have seen them die laughing at enemies who thought they were defeated. You can kill us, but you will not defeat us. We do not know how to be defeated." Deep within the detention cells, Lisa Grant heard the Admiral's words through the organic walls. She could not believe what she was hearing. The commander of the Third Fleet was offering his life for hers. "He cannot do this," she whispered. "He is doing it," Captain Reyes replied, his voice filled with something that might have been pride. "That is what command means. That is what honor means." The first voice intervened before the warrior faction could respond. Its ancient authority pushed through the chaos of competing voices, demanding to be heard. "Enough," it commanded. "This human has shown us something we have not seen since we left our home galaxy. He has shown us that love is stronger than fear. He is willing to die for strangers, just as our ancestors died to save the swarm from the silence. How can we respond to such sacrifice with cruelty?" The debate that followed was fierce but brief. The warriors argued that humans were too dangerous to trust. The first voice argued that humans were exactly what the swarm needed. A species that would fight to the death to protect others was not an enemy to be feared. It was an ally to be cherished. In the end, the first voice prevailed. Lisa Grant and her team were released, escorted to the surface of the command ship where Admiral Park waited. "You should not have come," Lisa Grant said as she stepped onto the deck. "I am your commanding officer," Admiral Park replied. "It is my job to bring my people home." The negotiations began that day, conducted in a chamber aboard the Benjamin Cole, where human and Kathrani sat at the same table for the first time. High Counselor Maren Shaw joined via communication link, representing the collective. The first voice spoke for the swarm, its presence filling the room through a holographic projection. The treaty took 3 weeks to finalize. Every clause was debated, every term examined. But the fundamental agreement was reached within the first hour. The Cathrani would receive colonization rights to 12 uninhabited systems at the edge of collective space. The Valorians would provide terraforming technology to help create the organic matter the swarm needed to survive. Humanity would establish a permanent peacekeeping force to ensure both sides honored the agreement that it was not a perfect solution. There were those on all sides who rejected the peace. Some Valorians could not forgive the attacks on their worlds. Some Cathrani could not release their hatred of those who had rejected them. Some humans questioned why they should care about aliens who had wanted nothing to do with Earth. Sergeant Rita Vance was among those who struggled. She had lost friends at Tazara, soldiers who had died fighting the creatures she was now expected to treat as allies. She found herself alone on the observation deck of the Benjamin Cole, staring at the Cathrani ships that hung peacefully alongside human vessels. Commander Lisa Grant found her there, standing in the dim light of distant stars. "You are angry," Lisa said. It was not a question. "Yes," Rita admitted. "I watched good soldiers die fighting those things. And now we are just going to pretend it never happened. We are going to give them worlds and technology and act like they are our friends." "No," Lisa replied. "We are going to remember what happened. We are going to honor those who died. But we are also going to make sure that no one else has to die. That is the best way to honor their sacrifice. Building a future where the killing stops." Rita was silent for a long time. Her hand unconsciously touched the scar on her arm where the Cathrani acid had burned through the bone. That wound would never fully heal. Neither would the wounds inside her. "I do not know if I can forgive them," she said finally. "You do not have to forgive them," Lisa replied. "You just have to let go of the war. That is enough for now. The rest comes later." The fleet returned to Earth as heroes. Millions lined the streets to welcome the soldiers, who had crossed the galaxy to defend strangers and returned with peace instead of more war. Admiral Park received the highest honors a grateful planet could bestow. Commander Lisa Grant was promoted and assigned to lead humanity's new diplomatic course, but in his private moments, Admiral Park found no peace. He stood at the window of his office, staring at the stars, thinking about the first voice's warning. The silence. A machine intelligence that had destroyed an entire galaxy. It was still out there somewhere, spreading through the universe like a disease. Lisa Grant found him there one evening, lost in thought. "You are worried about what comes next," she said. "The Cathrani fled across the void to escape the silence," the Admiral replied. "Billions of them, running from something so terrible that they crossed between galaxies. Sooner or later, that something will come here. And when it does, we need to be ready. Then we prepare," Lisa said simply. "We build alliances. We strengthen our forces. We teach the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for." Admiral Park smiled slightly. "You make it sound easy." "Nothing is easy. But everything is possible. That is what I learned from this mission. Humans are not special because we are good at violence. We are special because we refuse to accept defeat. We look at impossible situations and find ways through them. The silence is coming, but so are we." Outside the window, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, an ancient enemy was approaching. A force that had destroyed civilizations older than humanity could imagine. The war for survival was not over. It had only just begun. But Earth would answer that call too, because that was what humans did. They answered. The Galactic SOS went out. Earth answered with Warships. Part 4. the quiet dawn drifted through Kethrani space like a ghost. Commander Lisa Grant had ordered all non-essential systems shut down, running on minimal power to avoid detection. The darkness of the ship matched the darkness outside, broken only by the occasional flash of distant stars. 3 days into enemy territory, and they had seen things that changed everything they thought they knew about the swarm. "I am picking up massive structures ahead," Lieutenant Nathan Cole reported, his voice barely above a whisper, despite the fact that no one could hear them through the vacuum of space. "They are not ships. They are habitats. Living stations the size of moons." Lisa Grant moved to his console and stared at the readings. The structures were enormous, organic formations that pulsed with internal light. Smaller vessels moved around them like blood cells through veins, carrying resources and personnel. This was not the territory of mindless predators. This was a civilization. "They built all of this after fleeing their home galaxy," Isella said softly. The Valorian scientist was the only non-human aboard, her purple skin pale with wonder and fear. "They crossed the void with nothing and created a new home. My people have never accomplished anything like this." Marine Captain Jorge Reyes was less impressed. "A civilization that eats other civilizations is still a threat. Pretty buildings do not change what they did to Tessara." "No," Lisa Grant agreed. "But it changes what they might be willing to do in the future. People who can build this can be reasoned with. We just need to find someone willing to listen." They found the first voice 3 days later. The quiet dawn was detected by a Kethrani patrol, despite all their precautions. Rather than flee, Lisa Grant made a decision that would determine the fate of 2 species. She opened all communication channels and broadcast a message in every language they had recorded from Kethrani transmissions. "We come in peace. We wish to speak with your leaders. We believe there has been a terrible misunderstanding." The response came not as words, but as a summons. A massive bioship approached the quiet dawn and surrounded it with tentacles of organic matter. The crew was brought aboard the vessel and led through corridors that breathed and pulsed around them. Finally, they were taken to a chamber at the heart of the ship. The first voice was ancient beyond human comprehension. Its body filled the entire room, a mass of eyes and limbs and strange organs that served purposes Lisa Grant could not begin to understand. But when it spoke, its voice was gentle, almost sad. "Humans," the first voice said, "we have watched your species from afar. We know what you are. Killers, like all beings that survive. Yet you have come here alone, without your warships. This is either courage or foolishness." "Perhaps both," Lisa Grant replied. "I am Commander Lisa Grant of Earth. I have come to understand why your people attack the Valorian Collective, and to see if there is a way to end this war without more death." The first voice was silent for a long moment. Its many eyes studied the 4 beings standing before it, reading things in their bodies and minds that they themselves did not know. "You wish to understand," it said finally. "Then I will show you understanding." What followed was not speech but memory. The first voice shared its experience directly with their minds, bypassing language entirely. Lisa Grant and her team saw the history of the Kethrani unfold before them like a dream. They saw the home galaxy, a place of beauty and abundance where the swarm had lived in harmony for millions of years. They saw the coming of the Silence, a machine intelligence that consumed all organic life. World after world fell dark as the machine spread, unstoppable and utterly without mercy. The Kethrani fled. Billions of them crowded into bioships and launched themselves into the void between galaxies, a journey that took generations. They arrived in this galaxy weak, starving, desperate. They tried to communicate with the first species they encountered, the Valorians, but the Valorians saw only monsters. They fled in terror, and in their panic, They destroyed a Kethrani scout vessel carrying thousands of innocent beings. The swarm, already traumatized by the loss of their home, saw this as an act of war. They attacked not out of malice but out of fear. "We consume worlds because we must," the first voice explained when the vision ended. "Our biology requires vast quantities of organic matter. In our home galaxy, we had agreements with other species. We took only what was offered, what could be spared. But here, no one would speak with us. No one offered anything except weapons." Lisa Grant wiped tears from her eyes. The pain of the Kethrani experience was overwhelming, a species-wide trauma that had driven them to terrible acts. "But you have attacked civilian populations. Millions have died." "Yes," the first voice admitted, "and this shames us. But you must understand, Commander Grant, we are not one mind. The swarm is billions of individuals who chose to link their consciousness for survival. Among us are those who remember only fear and pain. They want vengeance against those who rejected us. They do not believe peace is possible. Is it possible?" Lisa asked. The first voice considered the question for a long time. "Perhaps, if you can offer us something other than death. We need worlds to settle, places where we can feed our people without consuming the homes of others. The galaxy is vast. There must be room for us somewhere." "I can make that offer," Lisa Grant said. "Earth and the Collective together have the resources to find uninhabited systems suitable for Kethrani colonization. Terraforming technology could be adapted to grow the organic matter your people need. Peace is possible if both sides are willing to work for it." "You speak for Earth?" "I speak for myself. But I believe my people will support this proposal. Humans do not enjoy war, despite what you may think. We fight because we see no other option. Give us another option, and we will take it." The first voice seemed satisfied. "I will present your proposal to the swarm, but I must warn you, Commander Grant, not all will agree. The young warriors who have known nothing but conflict will resist any peace. They may try to destroy this opportunity before it can grow." As if summoned by the warning, the chamber doors burst open. Kethrani warriors flooded into the room, their chittering voices full of rage. They had discovered the human presence and considered it an infiltration, not a diplomatic mission. "Capture them," the leader of the warriors commanded. "They will be executed as a message to Earth. Let the humans know that the swarm will never negotiate with prey." The first voice protested, but its authority was challenged by younger voices. The swarm was a democracy of minds, and in that moment, fear and anger outnumbered wisdom. Captain Jorge Reyes reached for his weapon but stopped when Lisa Grant shook her head. Fighting would only prove that humans were exactly what the warriors believed them to be. There would be no escape through violence. They were disarmed and taken to holding cells deep within the bioship. The organic walls closed around them like a living prison. There was no window, no door, no obvious means of escape. Nathan Cole slumped against the wall of their cell. "We came to make peace, and we are going to be executed." Admiral Park was right. This was foolish. "No," Lisa Grant said firmly. "This was necessary. The first voice heard us. It knows that peace is possible. Even if we die here, that knowledge survives. Someone will eventually build on what we started." "That is remarkably optimistic for someone about to be killed," Estella observed. Lisa Grant smiled despite the situation. "Optimism is a human trait. We always believe tomorrow will be better than today. Sometimes that belief is the only thing that makes it true." Above them, the warrior faction prepared for their execution. A message was sent to the human fleet, informing them of the captured soldiers and their scheduled death. The warriors expected fear. They expected retreat. They did not expect what came next. The Galactic SOS went out. Earth answered with warships. Part 3. The capital world of Valorous. Prime was unlike anything the human delegation had ever seen. The entire planet was a garden, cultivated over thousands of years into a paradise of living architecture and engineered ecosystems. Cities rose from the landscape like flowers, their buildings grown rather than constructed. Waterways flowed through every street. The air smelled of blossoms and carried the songs of creatures bred specifically to create pleasant sounds. Admiral Kevin Park stood at the window of his guest quarters, staring at a civilization that had chosen beauty over power. He thought about Earth, with its crowded cities and polluted skies and endless competition for resources. The Valorians had achieved something humanity had only dreamed of. They had built heaven, and now they needed soldiers to protect it. The High Council convened in the Crystal Dome, the same chamber where the decision to send the distress signal had been made. Representatives from all 7 species of the collective filled the seats. Their attention focused on the small group of humans standing at the center. High Counselor Marin Shah opened the session with traditional words of welcome, then quickly moved to the matter at hand. The Kethrani threat has not ended with your victory at Tessara. Our intelligence suggests they are gathering forces for a larger assault. We must prepare for war, but we do not know how. We have no generals. We have no weapons. We have only the memory of violence from thousands of years ago, and even that memory brings us shame. Admiral Park stepped forward. The Valorian Collective has resources that Earth could never match. Your shipyards can produce vessels at 10 times our rate. Your manufacturing capacity is beyond anything we have achieved. What you lack is the knowledge of how to use these resources for military purposes. We can provide that knowledge. The proposal was straightforward. Earth would share its military expertise with the collective. Human officers would train Valorian crews. Human engineers would redesign Valorian ships to carry weapons. In exchange, the collective would provide the industrial capacity to build a fleet large enough to defeat the Kethrani. You are asking us to become what we have rejected for millennia, a council member objected. You want us to build weapons, to train soldiers, to embrace the violence that we evolved beyond. I am asking you to survive, Admiral Park replied calmly. The Kethrani will not stop because you disapprove of their methods. They will consume your worlds and your people until nothing remains. You can die with your principles intact, or you can fight. The debate was fierce. Species that had not raised voices in anger for generations found themselves shouting across the chamber. Some argued that any compromise with violence was unacceptable. Others pointed out that extinction was the ultimate compromise. Commander Lisa Grant watched the chaos with growing frustration. She had spent her career studying alien civilizations, trying to understand how different species thought and felt. But she had never encountered anything like the Valorians. Their commitment to peace was so absolute that they would rather die than fight. She requested permission to speak and was granted the floor. I understand your fear, she said, her voice carrying through the suddenly quiet chamber. You look at us and see killers. You see creatures who solve problems with weapons and bloodshed. And you are not entirely wrong. Humanity has a violent history. We have caused tremendous suffering to each other and to our world. She paused, letting the words sink in. But I want to tell you something about human violence. We do not fight because we enjoy destruction. We fight because we love things worth protecting. Every soldier in our fleet has something back on Earth that they would die for: family, friends, home. The violence is not the point. The protection is the point. High Counselor Marin Shah considered these words carefully. And if we accept your help, if we allow your violence into our society, what happens when the war is over? Will we ever be able to return to what we were? Lisa Grant answered honestly. I do not know, but I know that you cannot return to anything if you are dead. The vote was close, but necessity won. The collective agreed to form a military alliance with Earth. Human commanders would have tactical authority over all combat operations. Valorian shipyards would begin producing weapon systems immediately. And most controversially, volunteers from collective species would be trained for combat. While the political discussions continued, Lieutenant Nathan Cole was pursuing a different line of investigation. He was an intelligence officer, trained to look beyond the obvious and find the hidden truths that others missed. Something about the Kethrani had been bothering him since Tezara. The swarm did not behave like mindless predators. Their attacks showed coordination and strategy. Their retreat had been organized, not panicked. And the message they had broadcast declaring Earth an enemy suggested a level of thought that went beyond simple hunger. He dug through every piece of intelligence the collective had gathered about the Kethrani over the centuries. Most of it was fragmentary, gathered from desperate refugees who had escaped consumed worlds. But patterns emerged from the chaos. The Kethrani had not always been destroyers. They had once lived in a distant galaxy, a place so far away that even the oldest Valorian records had no name for it. Something had happened there, something terrible. The Kethrani had fled across the void between galaxies, a journey that should have been impossible. They arrived in collective space, weak and starving. They had tried to communicate, but their biology was so alien that their signals were interpreted as threats. The first contact between Kethrani and Valorians had ended in violence, not because the Kethrani attacked, but because the Valorians fled in terror and accidentally destroyed a Kethrani vessel in the process. Nathan Cole brought his findings to Commander Grant. They are refugees, he explained, showing her the data. They are not monsters. They are desperate survivors doing whatever they must to feed their people. The war started because of a misunderstanding. Lisa Grant studied the evidence carefully. You think we can negotiate with them? I think someone needs to try. Every battle we win costs lives on both sides. If there is a chance for peace, we have to pursue it. She brought the proposal to Admiral Park, who listened with skepticism. The Kethrani had shown no interest in communication. They had declared Earth their enemy. Everything about them suggested that they would fight until they were destroyed or victorious. I am not dismissing your theory, the Admiral said finally, but I cannot halt military operations based on speculation. The fleet will continue preparing for offensive action. He studied Lisa Grant's face, seeing the determination there. However, he continued, I am assigning you a small team and a stealth vessel. You will attempt to make contact with the Kethrani leadership. If there is a possibility of peace, find it. But be careful, Commander. You will be deep in enemy territory with no support. Lisa Grant assembled her team quickly. Lieutenant Cole would handle intelligence and communication. Marine Captain Jorge Reyes would provide security. And a Valorian scientist named Izella, who had volunteered despite her species' horror of violence, would serve as a cultural advisor. Their ship was called the Quiet Dawn, a small stealth vessel designed for reconnaissance and special operations. It was fast, quiet, and nearly invisible to conventional sensors. It was also completely alone as it slipped away from the fleet and headed toward Kethrani space. Lisa Grant stood at the viewport as the stars stretched into lines of light. She was about to attempt something that might be impossible. She was going to try to make peace with an enemy that had promised to destroy her world. But that was what humans did. They faced impossible odds and refused to accept defeat. The Quiet Dawn vanished into the darkness, carrying 4 souls toward an uncertain future. The Galactic SOS went out. Earth answered with warships. Part 2. The first missiles launched from the Benjamin Cole before the Kethrani even knew the humans had arrived. Streaks of fire crossed the darkness of space, slamming into the nearest bioship with devastating force. The organic vessel, a creature that had consumed entire worlds, shuddered and broke apart under the assault. Captain Daniel Shaw stood on the bridge of the flagship, coordinating the attack with calm precision. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and dark skin, a veteran of naval combat exercises who had never expected to fight in actual war. Now he was commanding the first human battle against an alien enemy, and he intended to win. Fighter squadrons Alpha through Delta engage the smaller vessels, he ordered. Cruisers form a defensive line around the civilian evacuation routes. Destroyers target the larger bioships. Do not let anything reach the planet's surface. The battle erupted across the sky of Tessara. Human fighters, small and fast and deadly, swarmed around the Kethrani vessels like angry insects. Their weapons were designed to kill, refined through centuries of human conflict. What worked against each other worked even better against creatures who had never faced organized military resistance. Ambassador Tillenvar watched from the observation deck of the Benjamin Cole, where Commander Lisa Grant had brought him to witness the human response to his people's call for help. He had expected ships. He had expected soldiers. He had not expected this. The violence was overwhelming. Explosions filled the view screen, one after another, as human weapons tore through Kethrani flesh. The bioships tried to fight back, launching organic projectiles and acid sprays, but they were hopelessly outmatched. The humans moved with coordination that seemed almost mechanical, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when to fire. "This is what you do," Tillenvar whispered. "This is what your species does." Lisa Grant stood beside him, her face unreadable. "Yes," she said simply. "This is what we do. We fight so that others do not have to." On the surface of Tessara, the situation was desperate. The Kethrani had already landed ground forces, swarms of insectoid creatures that consumed everything in their path. Valorian civilians were fleeing toward the evacuation centers, but the creatures were faster. Thousands had already died. Marine Sergeant Rita Vance was the first human to set foot on alien soil. She led a squad of 20 soldiers, dropping from a transport ship into the middle of a city that was being devoured. The buildings around her were strange, grown from organic materials rather than built from metal and stone. The streets were filled with terrified aliens, beings with multiple limbs and strange skin who looked at her with wide eyes. "Move toward the evacuation center," she shouted to the fleeing civilians, hoping her translator device was working. "We will cover you. Move now." The Kethrani ground forces attacked within seconds. They came from every direction, chittering and clicking, their mandibles dripping with acid. Rita Vance did not hesitate. She raised her rifle and began firing, dropping the creatures with precise shots. Her squad formed a defensive circle around the fleeing civilians, their weapons creating a wall of death that nothing could pass. More Marines landed throughout the city. Human soldiers spread across Tessara, establishing safe zones and evacuation corridors. They fought with a ferocity that the Valorians had never witnessed, throwing themselves into danger to protect strangers they had never met. A young Valorian child became separated from her family during the chaos. She stumbled into an alley where 3 Kethrani hunters were waiting. Rita Vance saw the girl through her helmet display and ran without thinking. She crossed 50 meters of open ground in seconds, ignoring the acid that splashed against her armor. She reached the child just as the hunters lunged. 2 shots killed the first hunter. A combat knife took the second. The third managed to spray acid across her arm before she crushed its skull with her rifle butt. The pain was incredible, the acid eating through her armor and into her flesh, but she did not drop the child. She carried the girl back to her squad, handed her to a medic, and then returned to the fight. The battle for Tessara lasted 18 hours. By the end, the Kethrani had been driven back into space, their remaining ships fleeing into the darkness. The planet was scarred but saved. 2 million Valorians had survived because of human intervention. Admiral Park surveyed the aftermath from the bridge of the Benjamin Cole. The cost had been significant. 14 human ships damaged. 237 soldiers killed. But compared to what would have happened without their intervention, it was a victory. The Valorian government sent a delegation to the flagship to express their gratitude. High Counselor Marin Shaw herself came aboard, accompanied by Ambassador Tillenvar and several other officials. They gathered in the main conference room, a space that suddenly felt very small when filled with beings who represented civilizations thousands of years older than humanity. "You have saved our people," Marin Shaw said, her silver eyes moving across the faces of the human officers. "We called for help, expecting nothing. You answered with your finest warriors. We do not have words sufficient to express our gratitude." Admiral Park nodded respectfully. "We came because it was right. No other reason was needed." "And yet," Marin Shaw continued, her voice troubled, "what we witnessed today has shown us the truth about your species. You are exactly what we feared. Efficient killers. Masters of destruction. Your soldiers laugh and joke even as they take lives. Your ships carry enough weapons to destroy worlds." Lisa Grant stepped forward, choosing her words carefully. "High Counselor, we understand your concern. We know what we look like to you. But consider this. Every one of those soldiers who died today chose to be here. They crossed the galaxy to defend people they had never met, knowing they might not survive. That is also what humanity is." Sergeant Rita Vance was brought to the conference room to receive recognition for her actions. Her arm was bandaged where the acid had burned through to the bone, but she stood at attention despite the pain. The young Valorian girl she had saved was there too, clutching her mother's hand. The child broke free and ran to Rita, wrapping her small arms around the soldier's legs. She spoke in her own language, words that the translator rendered as simple gratitude. "Thank you for saving me," Rita Vance, who had killed 17 Kathrani that day without hesitation, knelt down and hugged the child gently. Her eyes were wet when she stood back up. "This is why we fight," she said quietly. "Not because we love killing, because we love what we can protect by being willing to kill." The Valorians did not fully understand. Their species had evolved beyond violence so long ago that the concept of protective aggression was almost alien to them. But they recognized the emotion in Rita Vance's eyes. They recognized the sacrifice dot as the delegation departed. Ambassador Talonvar remained behind. He approached Lisa Grant with a question that had been troubling him since the battle began. "When you received our signal," he asked, "did you hesitate? Did your leaders debate whether to help us, knowing we had rejected you?" Lisa Grant smiled slightly. "The debate lasted 6 hours. In the end, every single leader voted yes. Not because they thought we owed you anything. Not because they wanted something in return. They voted yes because someone was in trouble and we could help." Tillenvar was silent for a long moment. "Perhaps," he said finally, "we were wrong about your species. Perhaps there is more to humanity than violence." Before Lisa could respond, an alert sounded throughout the ship. A Kathrani transmission had been detected, broadcast across all frequencies. The message was short and clear. "Earth has made itself our enemy. The swarm remembers. The swarm will come. The war had only just begun." The Galactic SOS went out. Earth answered with warships. Part 1. The signal came from the darkest edge of known space. It was old technology, a broadcast method that most advanced civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. But desperation has no pride, and the Valorian collective was desperate. Ambassador Tillenvar stood before the High Council on Valoris Prime, his forearms trembling as he made his case. The council chamber was a magnificent dome of living crystal that had stood for 3,000 years. It had witnessed the birth of the greatest peaceful alliance in galactic history. Now it might witness its death. "We must activate the ancient beacon," Tilinvar said. His voice echoed through the chamber where representatives of 7 species sat in judgment. "The Kethrani swarm has consumed 12 worlds in the outer sectors. Our defenses are meaningless against them. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We have only words, and the swarm does not listen to words." High Counselor Murren Shaw, eldest of the Valorian leadership, closed her silver eyes. Her species had evolved beyond violence 10,000 years ago. They had built their civilization on the principle that intelligent beings could always find peaceful solutions. War was primitive. War was beneath them, but the Kethrani did not share this philosophy. "The beacon will reach the quarantined sectors," another counselor warned. "It will reach the death worlds. It will reach Earth." The chamber fell silent at the mention of that name. Earth, the blue world in a small corner of the galaxy, home to a species so violent that the collective had voted unanimously to isolate them. Humans had been observed for centuries. They had developed space travel, artificial intelligence, and weapons capable of destroying their own planet many times over. They fought wars over invisible lines drawn on maps. They killed each other over differences in belief. They were everything the collective feared. "Perhaps that is exactly what we need," Tilinvar said quietly. "Monsters to fight monsters." The vote was close, but survival won over pride. The ancient beacon was activated for the first time in 2,000 years. A message went out across every frequency, traveling through the void at speeds that bent the laws of physics. It was a simple message, translated into every known language. "We are dying. Please help." On Earth, Commander Lisa Grant was working a routine shift at the United Nations Space Command listening post in northern Canada. The facility was buried deep underground, protected by layers of rock and military security. Her job was to monitor deep space for any signs of extraterrestrial communication. In her 12 years of service, she had found nothing but cosmic background noise, until tonight. The signal hit her console like a thunderbolt. Her screens lit up with data that should have been impossible. This was not random noise. This was language. This was meaning. This was a cry for help from somewhere impossibly far away. Lisa Grant was not a woman who panicked easily. She had served in 3 combat deployments before transferring to intelligence work. She had seen death and destruction and had learned to keep her emotions locked away when duty demanded it. But her hand shook as she reached for the emergency communication line. Within 1 hour, the message had reached the highest levels of government. Within 6 hours, the United Nations Security Council was in emergency session. World leaders who had spent decades arguing over borders and resources suddenly found themselves united by a simple question: do we answer? Admiral Kevin Park presented the military assessment. He was a career officer in his late 50s, a man who had spent his entire life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. He had gray hair cut short, deep lines around his eyes, and a voice that commanded attention without ever rising above a conversational tone. "The signal originates from a region approximately 40,000 light-years from Earth," he explained, pointing to a holographic star map. "Based on our analysis, the senders are a multi-species alliance called the Valorian Collective. They have been aware of humanity for at least 2 centuries. They chose not to make contact because they consider us too dangerous. And now they want our help?" the American president asked. "They are facing extinction," Admiral Park replied. "A hostile species called the Kethrani swarm is consuming their worlds. The collective has no military capability. They eliminated warfare from their societies thousands of years ago. They are completely defenseless." The debate lasted 6 hours. Some argued that Earth should not involve itself in alien conflicts. Others pointed out that this was humanity's chance to prove itself to the galaxy. A few suggested that the whole thing might be a trap dot in the end. The vote was unanimous. Earth would answer the call. Admiral Park was given command of the Third Fleet, the most powerful naval force humanity had ever assembled. 112 warships, including carriers, destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels. 60,000 soldiers, sailors, and marines. The finest weapons that human engineering could produce. Commander Lisa Grant was assigned as the diplomatic liaison, the bridge between Earth and whatever aliens they might encounter. She was chosen because of her intelligence background, her combat experience, and her ability to remain calm in impossible situations. She reported to the flagship Benjamin Cole, a massive carrier that served as the mobile headquarters for the entire fleet. The launch happened 48 hours after the decision was made. Humanity had spent decades developing faster-than-light travel in secret, preparing for a day that most people believed would never come. Now the technology would carry them across the galaxy to answer a cry for help from strangers who had once rejected them. Admiral Park addressed the fleet before departure. His image appeared on screens throughout every ship, his voice reaching 60,000 men and women who had volunteered for the most important mission in human history. "We do not know what we will find out there," he said. "We do not know if the beings we are going to help will welcome us or fear us. We do not know if we will survive. But we know who we are. We are human beings. We have spent our entire existence fighting for survival against a hostile universe. We have fought each other, yes. We have made terrible mistakes. But we have also shown an incredible capacity for courage, for sacrifice, and for protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Today, we extend that protection beyond our own world. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. Lisa Grant stood on the observation deck of the Benjamin Cole, watching the stars blur into lines of light as they accelerated beyond the speed of light. She thought about the aliens who had considered humanity too dangerous to contact. She wondered what they would think when 112 warships appeared in their sky. She smiled slightly. They had asked for help. They were about to learn what human help looked like. The journey took 3 days. 3 days of preparation, of briefings, of nervous anticipation. The soldiers checked their weapons. The pilots ran simulations. The commanders studied every piece of intelligence they had about both the Valorians and the Kethrani. When the fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace, at the edge of Valorian territory, they found exactly what they had feared. A world was burning. Kethrani bioships, massive organic vessels that looked like nightmares given form, were descending through the atmosphere of a planet called Tessara. Millions of innocent beings were dying while the peaceful collective could do nothing but watch. Admiral Park did not hesitate. He had been given authority to act as he saw fit, and he saw fit to fight. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "Launch all fighters. Prepare for planetary assault. We did not come 40,000 light years to watch people die." The Third Fleet moved forward, weapons hot, ready for war. Earth had answered the call. Now the galaxy would see what that meant.